Okay, video one of this journey. Let's start right from the very top. The principle. And I'm going to use the word God to describe the principle because that's what we are most comfortable with. Yet that description or that word has so many different understandings of what it means that I'm going to try to give you the true description so that from this point on, as we move down in our journey to ascertain where our true power is, we can use this beginning to discern when it is that we're stuck within a belief to when it is that we're actually speaking from the trueness of our divinity. And divinity is simplicity, or simplicity is divinity. And if we don't get there, then it's going to be very difficult to jump to the next point, to the next point, to the next point. We've got to make it as simple as possible, that is logical, that is with reason, and that's denotatively sound, whereby if you are unable to get to the simplicity of what's going to be discussed, you're going to have a very difficult time to next move on to the next point, because you're always going to filter through a belief. And a belief is simply an impurity. It's potentiality versus being actual. And I think the better way to that I've heard to explain it is when people say that they purify gold. The process to purify gold is remove the impurities. Gold is gold is gold. It's already there. The self is the self is the self. It's already there. It's the absolute truth. It's already there. But what creates the distortion is the impurities that are added onto it, which we can just call the system or the matrix. So we have to move those impurities to arrive at the basic foundation. And again, simplicity is divinity. If we have to bring up a book and try to discern parables, or we have to go to government to get some privileges, then we are not dealing with that which is denotatively and reasonably sound through coming to develop ourselves through the power of seeing those fictions for what they are, and then we can actually, through understanding what those fictions are and those beliefs are and those impurities are, we can remove them so that we can arrive in our true power, which is with oneness, which with this source. Okay, so the first thing, we're going to use the word God, and I'm going to get down to, here, I'm going to put the old bifocals on, of reading from what I've written down so far and see if we can move down the page and come to simplicity. And then fully arrive, what this whole series of videos are going to attempt to do, short videos, is derive at your true power. And from there, from that true power, you can now control the fiction. Okay? God, principle, is a notice of non-agreements. The laws of nature, which do not need a subjective self to form an agreement before these laws can interact within the idea of creation itself. So meaning, if you're treading water, you can't negotiate with the water to prevent you from drowning. You are unable to negotiate with nature from it stopping to grow. You cannot negotiate with a tree to ascertain whether you can chop it down. You cannot stop from breathing in and out. You cannot form an agreement that you can stop breathing and still live. Principle is non-agreement. It exists without you making an agreement before it actually affects the laws of nature that are paramount for you in order to even have the idea of an agreement. Now God, the attribute, so principle and attribute are synonymous with each other. They do not exist without the other. They cannot exist without the other. The principle and attribute are one of the same thing, but only divided for the fact that you can now come to know the principle through the attribute. That's the reason why they're divided. You're just like a mirror. In order to see yourself, you look into the mirror. That self in the mirror is not you. It is the attribute quality of you. You're still the principle. So we have to come to the realization when we're speaking about God, the principle, we're never going to understand what that truly is because it's pureness. It's absolute. And we are only going to be able to ascertain what we are within the attributial quality, which will then resemble always the principle, but we'll never come to know the principle. We'll only come to know the limitations that we are being subject to. So the Fibonacci sequence is the best way. Those are not just numbers, they are actually descriptions, one in one, principle and attribute. One does not exist without the other. They exist as one thing within the Fibonacci sequence. It's just one entirety of itself. Okay? But you'll never come to know the principle. It's pure light, pure. No one's ever discussed light. They discussed the illumination all their life. All science has only discussed illumination. Never, ever, no religion, no belief will ever discuss the principle. You can't. No one's seen the principle. It's impossible. You'll be absorbed in the principle at the very first, at the moment you try to explain it. Therefore, the attribute wouldn't be there to explain the principle. Do you see? We just got to step out of the belief structure that we think that we've got it all captured in a book. That's ego. Stop thinking that God in the Bible is explaining everything. That's why there's so much confusion. Okay? It doesn't explain or could ever explain. It's helping you to understand the self that's trying to explain the principle. Okay? It's not the thing in the mirror. You're trying to explain the reality to the thing in the mirror. Okay? In this reality, you are that principle that's giving the reflection of the thing in the mirror. You're not the reflection. The same as the principle is not the reflection. It is giving the attribute to unexplain itself. But in itself, you'll never come to know because it's absolute. So if we just get all religions and all beliefs, those are distortions. Distortions with limitation. If we just realize, just let go of the fact we'll never come to know and stop explaining it, because to explain it through a limitation in itself is an oxymoron. Okay? So God as a principle is non-agreement. The God explained in all, it's in your constitutions, on your money, and in your Bible, is the culmination of man explaining the revelations within himself and his interactions and observations in nature that then converse with another self to form an agreement. So God in all aspects of humanity are the attribute qualities of the principle, which are notice of agreements. And agreements eventually form through revelations, as I've just said, so I'm reading it now. Agreements eventually formed through revelations within subjective self and their observations made in nature. It is suffering. You'll never remove from suffering. Suffering is within this matter self. You will never be relieved of it unless you are fully dead. Okay, you're removed of this matter quality, and then you move into a different quality that is the signal that through modulation has allowed you to experience this life through this self here we call matter. So God in the Bible is the agreements. The God that's not in the Bible is the non-agreement. And if you get that inculcated into your mind, you're going to see things and live in full freedom than you've ever experienced before, because you've never experienced freedom. A belief is a structure, is a confinement, and you're going to be as confined to the level of agreements that you've made to that belief. It's an impurity. Gold is gold is gold is gold. You remove impurities to get to the gold. You remove the ore to get to the diamond. You already are the entirety of self. You cannot be anything other than that. You are just experiencing agreements to then form societies with others of like. And that's all the system is to ascertain what those agreements are, so that when we look at the sky and we can say that color is blue or that color is gray, it's just a form of interaction that we can move forward to make other agreements that hopefully within that we stay honorable in and not impose our will to go against those agreements. We're just trying to create some level of foundation that we, like a building, we build a cornerstone, and we have to have an agreement of how we're going to build that building so it stands for its purpose. That's all God is within the system. Always will be, and always will be, always will ever be. And that God we classify as law. Law is God, God is law. Law is a combination of those agreements that we've made. And when you're out of agreement, that's when you're breaking the law. That's when you are under the scrutiny of God. That's when you're in judgment. Is when the judgment is the laws that we've agreed to, and they are measured against your actions. Okay? Agreements are the foundation of all law through reason. Now let me read this here. It's Blackstone's Commentaries of Property in General. It says, Holy Writ, the all-bountiful Creator gave to man dominion over the earth. And right there, that's your first agreement. Dominion over the earth. The very first agreement. Okay? If you don't think you have dominion over the earth, then you're not part of the agreement. Therefore, you're going to break the agreement based on your own will, of your own ignorance, that you have dominion over the earth. You see how that works? That's the judgment. I'll continue reading. And over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. This is the only true and solid foundation, there it is, a cornerstone, of man's dominion over external things. Whatever airy metaphysical notions may have been started by fanciful writers upon the subject, the earth, therefore, and all things therein are the general property of mankind, exclusive of all other beings, from the immediate gift of the Creator. And, while the earth continued bare of inhabitants, it is reasonable to suppose that all was in common among them, and that everyone took from the public stock to his own use such things as his immediate necessities required. Okay? The first agreement, dominion. In fact, even the agreement to the Bible, reading of the Bible and its belief, is your agreement to it. It is agreements. That's what God is. That's what we're speaking about within the manufacturing of all words placed upon a paper. If you don't comprehend what English word is, then it doesn't matter what the book says. Therefore, you will always in your own power, your own dominion, and that dominion is that autonomy to compose, to infect your will, your intent upon the earth, and hopefully in accordance with everyone else, so be to maintain peace. That's what the system is maintain peace, and you can't maintain peace without agreements. That is God. That's the judgment. Okay. Dominion, the entirety of one's. Okay. Actually, you know what we'll do? We'll stop it there, and then we'll move on to the next video on. We'll speak about dominion.